Hey, what's up y'all, Oklasoft. If you saw my Ocarina of Time retrospective, then you know I'm always looking for the best way to play the game, a premiere or alpha version if you will. Well, there's a couple different options you have to get the optimal Ocarina of Time experience, and it mostly depends on what you're going for. As I'll discuss in this video, OOT 3D is a great choice all around for gameplay, quality of life, as well as being truly the best looking version of the game that exists. I think the 3DS version, when properly scaled up on an emulator, is the gold standard and the true alpha dog version. And yet the original Ocarina of Time, now in the form of Ship of Harkinian or NSO, still remains as popular as ever, probably gets played by more people than the 3DS version. It's kind of a shame that the 3DS's amazing library is somewhat trapped on quirky hardware, but the controller plus mouse setup works extremely well for me. Similar to the Wii U emulator, Cemu, Lime 3DS lets you interact with the touchscreen via mouse clicks, and it works pretty well. The real annoyance comes from having to deal with and properly display the second screen at all times. It makes for an awkward conversion to a single screen, but for my playthrough, I mostly left the second screen off camera, and you're left with an even cleaner first screen that has very few HUD elements. It's fantastic, but 3DS emulation is a little clunky by nature. Ocarina 3D and the NSO version are the two most common ways that normal players access Ocarina of Time. I played the NSO version out of sheer curiosity, and I'd be all about it if not for the pesky NSO subscription requirement to access the game. That doesn't work for me. I like to know I can power off a console for 5 years, turn it on, and boot up my old save file. The Wii Virtual Console could do that. I bought Ocarina for $8 or so back then for that. That was just before Nintendo had its hooks into the Switch audience the way it does. They figured out that you can just continually charge customers for the right to access a bunch of 32 meg ROM files. It's kind of a dick move. It actively harms the consumer, and so we're forced to find non-subscription alternatives. So luckily for us, there are several excellent options. First, like we mentioned, is straight up 3DS emulation via Citra/Lime 3DS, or whatever the current fork happens to be. I can't really keep up, but my Lime 3DS install worked perfectly, so I see little reason to upgrade or change it. When I have an emulator ROM combo that works perfectly together, I usually just leave it alone, save for the occasional patch. I'm not sure if Lime 3DS is still being actively worked on, but it works for the majority of the 3DS library amazingly well, so it's good for plenty more than just Ocarina of Time. The 3DS version, when emulated, lets OOT put its best foot forward graphically. And while it does appear to shift the color palette slightly, some areas look more colorful or saturated and vibrant, so that gritty, shadowy darkness that the original had is toned down. But still, OOT 3D is my gold standard for visuals, as I think that despite the lack of atmosphere in a few scenes, the other 95% of the game just looks cleaner, truer to the original manual art. It's easier on the eyes, and I adore OOT, but even with a genuine love for the janky, early 3DS extra low poly character models, I've got to admit that OG Ocarina, when displayed on a modern, high-density pixel display, shows you just how atrocious the N64's output resolution was, effectively 240p, and the 3DS is only effectively 400 by 240, but even with that same low output res, it has the advantage of almost 15 years of graphics tech advances. So the 3DS version is the closest thing that exists to an official modern or gold version of OOT. If Nintendo was going to remaster the original game at this point, I assume they would start with the 3DS game as a base. I'd love to have a working Switch compatible 60 FPS version of Ocarina 3D with the second screen touch controls moved back to the main screen, maybe with some sort of hybrid system. Modern control layouts are a godsend, and Ship of Harkinian implements them effortlessly, mapping the optimal control layout with a standard Pro controller or equivalent, and additionally auto-mapping to an NSO N64 pad. Ship of Harkinian immediately recognizes that I'm playing with a real N64 controller and disables analog camera control with the right stick automatically, as well as maps every single button exactly the way it should be for an N64 controller. It's beautiful. I began my little test today using the real N64 pad to get the closest thing I could approximate to an authentic N64 experience without actually having an N64. So first, let's take a look at Ship of Harkinian as it simulates the output of an N64, and we'll do this for comparison's sake, really just to see what the actual system looks like as approximated by Ship's N64 graphics mode. And you see just how low and crappy 240p output really is, and this is something close to what I and every other N64 player experience. 240p does look a lot better on a real CRT, however, and one thing I'll point out is that at 240p, the original textures versus the mod textures we're about to use are hardly even discernible. So the 240p was low enough for these god-awful low-res textures, so that's why the original textures look so bad today. They were simply never meant to be seen on modern high-res displays. Now I have two separate mods we're going to take a look at. Both spruce up the textures all over the game. One leaves all the color palettes alone and only up-reses the actual environment textures, and the other attempts to overhaul Ship entirely and presents it as if it were the 3DS version. Alright, let's take a look at Ship of Harkinian Reloaded. This looks just like the OG game, all the colors remain, and importantly Link's character models and all the other in-game 3D character models, NPCs like Saria and Darunia and the Deku Tree Sprout, are all the same as their OG version, so they have not been altered in any way. So after playing through the Forest Temple on Reloaded, I realized that it does indeed preserve the original color palette exactly, but leaving the in-game character models the same as the original kinda makes it inferior looking to the next mod we're going to talk about. Alright, so this is the Djipi's 3DS experience. The exact same day that I dropped my Ocarina video, another guy named Leon Krisky dropped a lengthy Ocarina retrospective as well. So of course I watched his, and it's an excellent video and you should check his out too. But I was kind of shocked that he ran Ship of Harkinian for his retrospective with the Djipi's 3DS experience, the 3DS inspired mod that transforms the entire game with replaced textures and swapped out character models. If it was good enough for this guy to run for an entire retrospective, it had to be worth checking out. At first, when I started writing the script, I was going to bash the Djipi's 3DS mod as it seemed to change the color palette of the original game in a way that just alters the feel too much. And I wanted to test this out for myself and see if it really did change the art style of the game. So I completed the Forest Temple, like I said, with both mods enabled, just to see what it felt like to play through an entire dungeon and to experience the dark and gloomy Forest Temple. And throughout the dungeon, I would occasionally switch the alternate assets on and off just to really get a feel for what the new textures were actually doing. And so both mods are really impressive, but the winner for me is the Djipi's 3DS experience, and I now see why you would want this enabled after playing through the Forest Temple. Transforming the environments does go a long way to reduce the crappiness of the OG graphics, and the Reloaded mod is for just that. You want to preserve the OG character models because ultimately Link and the other main character models have a more dramatic impact on making the game look dated or not dated. So the swapping of Link and Saria's and Zelda's 3DS models really offers the best visual experience for playing OOT. So in conclusion, as much as I wanted to hate on Djipi's 3DS experience for altering the OG game, it simply looked the better of the two Ship of Harkinian mods, and as a result felt better to play. Djipi's 3DS experience offers replaced character models along with updated environments, and that's really the crux of it for me, as both mods offer much needed upscaling of all the game's HUD elements, redrawn 4K style item icons, and reimagined textures that aim to capture the look of the original. The Reloaded mod offers only non-destructive edits that don't change the characters in any way. And while it is an improvement on the original and is highly recommended if you demand the OG experience, when we're talking mods for Ship, nothing compares to Djipi's 3DS experience. And after beating the Forest Temple with this mod enabled, I knew I had made the right choice. As of December 2024, I would say that running Djipi's 3DS experience is the best way to experience Ship of Harkinian. mostly for the replaced character models. Those 3DS character models really go a long way to sprucing up and freshening up the entire game. As for the 3DS version, Lime 3DS controls wonderfully and has fantastic controller and button mapping features, and it has a limited amount of input lag, but downsides include the cumbersome second display that requires mouse input, and OOT 3D Online is snappy and responsive, but not as snappy as Ship of Harkinian. No matter what mod or texture pack you have enabled, the base Ship of Harkinian with DirectX 11 is just a lighter system load for Windows. But frankly, neither 3DS emulation or running Ship of Harkinian is very taxing for a decent computer rig. So going forward, if I'm not playing Ocarina 3D and I decide to board the ship, I'll definitely have the Djipi's 3DS experience enabled to freshen up and spice up my playthrough. I'm going to be moving on to some new games now, so it's nice to put Ocarina down for a while knowing I have a legit amazing version to pull up on my PC anytime I want it. I never have to pay a subscription fee just to play my old save file, and that's the way I like it. So that's going to do it for me today. All the relevant links will be in the description. I've been Oklasoft, and thanks for watching, and stay tuned for another big retrospective video on Mario or Pokemon. I haven't decided yet.